As all of you know, I'm just somebody who sits in his car and speaks his mind about one thing or another. But I've come to believe, do I say believe or should I say understand? The latter would imply more conviction. I've come to understand that somewhere along the way between, let's say between the year 2009, 2010 or so, and now, that our reality leapt into a different timeline. And I'm not going to say that the timeline that we're on is the darkest timeline, but it's certainly one that I think we would be well advised to leave, to derail from, and to get back onto the timeline that we were on before things started totally going haywire the way that they have over the course of the past 10 years, but especially the last 5 years, but especially the last 2 or 3 years. And I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way. I don't think everyone would articulate it the way that I'm articulating it. I don't think most people would say, would talk about timelines and, put it in that kind of esoteric or sci-fi kind of way. But that's the way my mind works. That's the nerd in me. So here's a moment that I recall from the time before we leapt into the timeline we are in right now. Well before, actually. I estimated, I was being conservative when I said 2009 or so. A lot of people will think 2012 was when the switch happened, because 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world according to the Mayan calendar, right? That was supposed to be when when it all ended, but it didn't end, or did it? Maybe what came to an end was some semblance of sanity, and that's why I'm holding the camera at a sort of Dutch angle right now, because things are askew, and that's what I'm going to go with. That's the motif I'm going to go with for this video. So here's something from the before time. Here's something that those of you who aren't old enough will marvel at, even though it's just a tiny little thing. I remember it was back in 83 or 84 or so. It must have been around that time. Like the latest it could have been was 85. There was an interview with Tony Danza. Tony Danza is an actor. I don't think he's done anything for a long, long time, but he was at the time on a sitcom called Who's the Boss, which was a pretty crap sitcom. But before that, he was in one called Taxi, which was actually pretty funny, which was actually a pretty good show. And he was being interviewed on Entertainment Tonight. I don't remember why. I don't remember what the occasion was. And Tony Danza was, if those of you old enough to remember, I think his actual personality was pretty much like the characters that he played. He was just sort of this working class guy, maybe from Queens or someplace like that. Italian, kind of, plain spoken, not that well educated, but still, articulate in his own way, sort of guy. And so I remember over the course of this interview, he must have been asked a question like, what do you think is gonna happen? What do you think the new trend is going to be? Maybe it was near the end of the year, just like we're right now. We're near the end of 2022, and maybe I'm just speculating now, about what prompted this response from him. Maybe they were asking, what do you think 1985 is going to hold, or what do you think if it was 85, what do you think 1986 has in store for us? Especially in the entertainment business. And Tony Danza's response was something like this. He said, I don't know, I mean, who'd have thought that some big ugly black guy would be the next big thing? But now you got Mr. T. So I don't know, who knows what's coming next. Sorry, that did something to my voice, that Tony Danza imitation. So that's what he said. He said that because Mr. T was at the time, all, just Vogue. He was everywhere, and he was cool. There was like a stretch of a year or year and a half where he was really cool, Mr. T. Like the coolest guy on the planet, especially if you were a 12-year-old boy. And I remember being kind of shocked, even though I was just a little, like a adolescent kid watching TV, like at Tony Danza saying these things about Mr. T, calling him a big ugly black guy. And those were his exact words. Okay, I was paraphrasing the rest of it, but I remember he said he used the term, big ugly black guy to describe Mr. T. I remember being shocked on the one hand because I was thinking to myself, boy, Mr. T's not going to like that. Mr. T's going to pity the fool who says that about him, who calls him ugly. But also, like, was that offensive? Was he being racist? And I remember the interviewer just sort of smiled and nodded. The conversation went on from there, and it concluded, and that was it. That was it. That was the last I ever heard about this interview. There was no follow-up. There was no, like, the next day, Tony Danza's ugly racist remarks on Entertainment Tonight. Of course, there wasn't the internet back then, so you couldn't. There weren't the outrage kind of sites that just live to cancel people. Here, the Dutch angle was getting a little hard on my hand there, so I'm going to move it along to just 12 o'clock. So there was no outrage, and things went on as before. Tony Danza's career proceeded as it had been going before, and this just can you imagine living in a world like that? Can you imagine living in a world where somebody says something that's a little inappropriate, but basically harmless, and also, there's truth to it? Like why, a freakish-looking a big black guy with a mohawk who goes, and so forth. Everything that was in Mr. T's shtick, I don't think anyone would have seen, Mr. T becoming a phenom before Mr. T happened. So he was right. Tony Danza was correct, even if the way that he put it, was not the best, was not the most tactful way of saying it. So imagine a world where somebody says something like that, and that could be perceived as racist, or could be perceived as offensive by some, and yet nothing really comes of it. And the world goes on as before. Maybe some people laugh about it. Some people aren't, say, what a jerk. Some people just shrug over it. Some people say, yeah, he's got point, I wouldn't have seen Mr. T coming either before Mr. T happened. And then that's it. No orgy of sanctimony, no manipulation of the public, or a particular segment of the public into a righteous fury. No forced apology, no humiliation. Nothing came of it. And I haven't looked it up, but I bet if I look it up, I won't be able to find it. I bet if I type in Tony Danza, Mr. T, big ugly black guy, I bet nothing comes up, because it didn't even make a splash. It didn't even make a ripple. Apparently, Mr. T didn't even care. Apparently he just shrugged it off, or maybe he didn't even know about it. Imagine a world like that. That's called a sane world. That's called a world, where people go about their business and have their priorities straight, and don't take what a minor celebrity says on a trashy show about the entertainment business. Don't take it as some huge important deal, right? Because it's not. Boy, do I long for that world. It's crazy that it just seems like it's just a million miles away. It seems like it's something that we've lost and will never regain. And of course, it's not just about Tony Danza. What Tony Danza said about Mr. T, that's representative of what I'm talking about here, of how we've jumped to this timeline where everything is a headache, where where everything is contested, where everyone is at each other's throats, where every day you wake up and you just feel like things are accelerating at a faster and faster rate towards the ultimate disaster. You didn't feel that way back then. At least I didn't, and I wasn't aware of others feeling any differently. It was just sort of, it was a different world. It was a better world. It wasn't perfect, not by far, but it was certainly much, much better. How do we get back to that world? That's what I want to know. Can we get back to it? We'll see. I guess there's not really a good way to end this, so I'll just end it now. Leave me your thoughts below.